I've got a quick announcement today. I'll be going live tomorrow night, that is, Tuesday night, March 19th, with John Hirschauer and Stephanie Nicholas from the Unapologetics podcast. Given how dark the news has been lately, and given how depressed some people have been hearing the awful news that dominates Catholic headlines lately, we're going to try to keep the subject matter of gently more positive topics, so feel free to tune in and shoot us a question or two in the chat. The live stream will be on this channel at about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 5 p.m. Pacific. It should be a good time, and the guests have a good and informative podcast themselves. I think you'll like it. Now, on to the train wreck of the day. But first, I wanted to thank my patrons for their support of this channel. If you want to join them in supporting my work, there are links in the description below, including links to Patreon and Subscribestar, which is actually now up and running again. Also, I wanted to repeat my call for submissions for the blog, returntotradition.org. There have been a few articles posted by viewers and supporters like you, so please feel free to submit an article for the blog if you want to use the email address in the description below. I can't pay for them at this stage of things, but I do want to help get more Catholic voices out there doing this kind of work for the Church. Germany has long been a source of strife for the Catholic Church. Since at least the time of the Protestant Revolt, figures like Luther and the atheistic philosophers he indirectly inspired have been a continued thorn in the side of the Church. This persists to this day, thanks at least in part to the influence of German New Theologians and their sympathizers who participated in the council, and their intellectual progeny who now wear collars and mitres in the hierarchy at present. Often in our discourse we see that a story comes from either the Jesuits or from the German Bishops' Conference, and we know that we're in for an absolute dumpster fire of waffling on morality, typically sexual morality or religious dialogue, because in our time, those seem to be the two places in the Church today where heterodoxy is promoted the most. Today isn't any different. Late last week, Cardinal Marx declared that the German Bishops' Conference would move forward with making supposed needed changes to the Church's teaching on sexual morality. I seem to recall another German priest who once decided to move ahead without Rome on changing the teachings of the Church. Anyway, let's have a look at this hot mess. Need for change. Cardinal Marx says German bishops will revisit Catholic sexual teaching. From March 14th. Cardinal Reinhard Marx signaled today that the Catholic Church in Germany is open to revisiting Catholic sexual teaching that prohibits contraception, cohabitation, and homosexual relationships. Of course, during their March 11th to 14th spring assembly in Lingen, Germany, the German Bishops' Conference discussed possible causes and reasons for the current clerical sex abuse crisis in Germany. Invited speakers raised the idea of ordaining the so-called viri probati, morally proven men, as well as accepting contraception, cohabitation, homosexual relationships, as well as gender theory. Oh boy. The German bishops have now decided to further discuss these themes in a series of discussions which they call a synodal path. Cardinal Marx, the president of the German Bishops' Conference, and Archbishop of Munich Freising, gave a press conference today at the conclusion of the spring assembly. He pointed out that the German bishops dealt with the systemic problems related to the abuse crisis, something that was not discussed in Rome at the recent sex abuse summit. Here it is about dangers of a systemic nature. As far as he knows, Marx added, we are the only church that confronts this question now. That's throwing some shade at the other bishops. The press conference had been delayed because, as Marx revealed, only in the last 30 minutes of the gathering were the bishops able to agree on starting a synodal process in Germany to discuss these matters further. For this, 3 discussion forums will be led by Bishop Felix Glenn on celibacy, Bishop Franz Josef Bode on sexual morality, and by Bishop Weissman concerning questions of power and participation. Gotta get that clericalism in there. In September, the first results are to be presented. This process is to be undertaken together with the Central Committee of German Catholics, the ZDK. Cardinal Marx, who showed himself very content with the outcome of the spring assembly, explained. He later told the audience he had quickly called Professor Thomas Sternberg, the head of ZDK, in order to receive his commitment to collaboration. Sternberg is known for his promoting the idea of married priests, communion for quote-unquote remarried divorcees, and other progressivist themes. In explaining the proposed topics that will be further discussed by the German bishops, Cardinal Marx pointed out three aspects: the question of power, of celibacy, and of the Church's sexual morality. Quote, "The question is permitted, does celibacy always have to be?" He explained and added that the Catholic Church now already has married priests. Marx also referred to one of the candid speakers during the Episcopal meeting, Professor Eberhard Schalkenhoff, who has proposed a loosening of the Church's moral teaching to include the acceptance of contraception, cohabitation, gender theory, and homosexual couples. Can you imagine, as an aside, a priest who has the life experience of Caitlyn Jenner, is what I'm going to say. That's what they're talking about here. Cardinal Marx sympathetically commented on the contribution of this speaker, saying that Schalkenhoff presented the debate about sexual morality very well. There is, he added, also a need for discussion about the catechism. Schalkenhoff had been an earlier participant at a controversial May 2015 Day of Study in Rome in preparation for the Second Synod on the Undermining of the Family, which had been organized by, among others, the German Bishops' Conference, of course. I can barely read this without laughing, so I'm going to let you read this one on your own. It's a link is found on returntotradition.org, and that's a link to the description if you want it. Sorry if I couldn't help laugh my way through that. It's either laugh or cry, honestly, at this point. I, for one, will never understand why people in Germany still trust anyone with the name Marx. The last Marx I trusted was Groucho, and this isn't definitely anything like that. Cardinal Marx is, of course, notorious for continuing to push heterodox ideas that attack the family directly. This is nothing new. But let's have a look at Professor Thomas Sternberg of the ZDK. He was appointed in late 2015 to head the ZDK and immediately caused a stir when he openly defended same-sex unions and an organization that provides abortions. The ZDK, or the Central Committee of German Catholics, an ominous Orwellian-sounding name that sounds East German, is a lay Catholic organization with a great deal of influence in Germany. Appointed on November 20th, 2015 to his post, Sternberg made headlines just 2 days later for calling for the liberalizing of Germany's supposedly strict abortion laws. This may come as a surprise to my largely American audience, but U.S. abortion laws are shockingly liberal compared to those of the European Union. Abortion after 20 weeks is banned in many parts of Europe, and often a certification process is required for a mother seeking the execution of her child before she is permitted to go to the abortuary for the procedure. What Sternberg was advocating in this case was elimination of the legally mandated certification process, which would remove a legal barrier to the killing of children. This is, again, the person the Bishops' Conference in Germany is having advised them on supposedly needed changes to sexual morality. These counseling certificates are controversial in Germany, especially considering that they are given out by at least one supposedly Catholic organization. Often referred to as death certificates by pro-life activists in that country, the process is often considered to be nothing more than a rubber stamp for perpetuating evil. The German Bishops' Conference had a Catholic organization doing the certification until the Vatican banned the practice in 2006. Though that organization still, to this day, lists those certificates on their website. One wonders when excommunications for disobedience are coming down on Sternberg and the other lay Catholics who do this work, or the bishop who sits on that organization's board. Oh wait, for that to happen, the bishop or lay people in question would need to show Lefebvrean tendencies. How foolish of me. Anyway, Cardinal Marx in 2014 defended the Catholics who work for the lay organization in question, saying that they shouldn't be excluded from the church. So there's that. Apparently working in an abortuary isn't strong enough grounds for excommunication in the German Church of Nice. Now, the topic of changing sexual morality in the church includes the idea of ordaining what they call morally proven men, that is, married men over the age of 50. Because we all know that married men over 50 never have clandestine affairs, especially with other men or with minors. And that disregards the utter rejection of what the celibate priesthood is built on, the marriage of the priest to the church, and his serving as a spiritual father to the flock he is responsible for. The handful of married priests in the Latin Rite are largely former Anglican or Lutheran ministers, and an exception was made in their cases years ago, likely done in the name of ecumenical unity. What that accomplished was to crack the door open to ending priestly celibacy. Now we have two fronts in the war, one in the Amazon and the other in Germany, which was to be expected. Not to be outdone, though, Professor Schockenhoff proposes the following changes to the Church's sexual morality, which I'm going to quote verbatim from that LifeSite article I read a moment ago. That sexuality and lust be regarded in their positive characteristics as helping people to assure themselves of their identity. Thus, they be regarded as an end in itself without reference to procreation. That sexuality determines the whole existence of man, which is something Schockenhoff claims, while also affirming that the social end of sexuality and its significance for the preservation of human society with the help of procreation. Nonetheless, artificial contraception should be accepted. Family planning, also with the help of artificial means of contraception, are not an act against life, he said, but rather a service to life. Self-sex, that is to say, I'm going to call it self-abuse, can mean a responsible dealing with one's own sexuality. These, again, are quotes from the head of ZDK. Homosexual acts realize positive values of meaning, inasmuch as they can be an expression of friendship, reliability, fidelity, and assistance in life. Woo, lad. While a monogamous marriage is the best biographical and institutional frame for human sexuality, can you imagine talking about your marriage that way, as being the best biographical and institutional frame? Schockenhoff has continually referred to a document from something called the Wurzburg Synod, which asks whether a relationship of an unmarried couple, as long as the relationship is orientated toward duration and exclusivity, is not a modern form of clandestine marriage. Again, this is the man advising the German Bishops' Conference. Schockenhoff states that such an approach could regard the sexual life of such couples positively as long as they do not damage anyone. Same-sex relationships are to be unconditionally accepted, and their sexual activity should not be morally disqualified. Tell that to St. Paul. The Church should accept with an approving language that there are people who cannot fully identify themselves as being either of the male or female sex. It is not in every person that the clear sexual identification is to be found, he claims. While Schockenhoff still says that the Church should hold on to an understanding of marriage as an emotional, integral life partnership between a man and a woman, again, refer to your marriage as that, is eager to make sure that herewith homosexual and intersexual people, as well as gender-confused persons, are not to be unjustly discriminated against. This is the brave new church we all now live in. There literally is no area of sexual morality that is free from meddling from the bishops' conferences, and one is left wondering where the limits are. After all, remember, Cardinal Marx is moving forward without approval from Rome, or so he said. And if they get away with this, then other bishops' conferences will certainly follow. And if he is doing this without Roman approval, then good German Catholics need to petition the Vatican for an intervention. Synodality is going to leave the Church unrecognizable in a few short years, and these so-called reforms are being done in that name by people who don't share our faith, even if they share membership in the organization called the Catholic Church. That much is evident from their proposal. Pray for their conversion before it's too late. Time draws short. As always, thank you for listening and for your support. Pray and do acts of penance for the liberation and exaltation of the Church. I'm Anthony Stein. Ave Maria.